on some wiring today, so welcome back. We're going to take a look at this. If you'll remember, in the last video, we worked on the old dimmer switch up in there. But if you remember in that video, I pointed out that the cluster, I'd done a little more work to the cluster. When I turned on the park lights, the lights for the two gauges and the speedometer didn't come on. I did not have signal indicators. The only two lamps that actually worked were the oil and amp lights. And those actually aren't grounded in the cluster, they're grounded somewhere else. And it turns out that there wasn't a problem with the wiring in the cluster, so much as I had purchased new bulb sockets and new bulbs to fix all the broken ones and burned out ones. And the sockets were just a little loose. I bent down the little metal contacts and they make good contact now. I did test it again and all the lights function. The issue that I have now is this little potentiometer rheostat guy here. This is the dimmer for the instrument panel, and it doesn't actually work. So they came on briefly, but you can see how loose that is. This thing is just either needs to be taken apart and cleaned or replaced. It's just got a bad contact. If you keep pressure on it, they'll stay on. So I'm happy the cluster works. But one thing that I noticed, and you probably saw this in the last video when I was testing the headlights, if you turn on the park lights, so that's headlights are off, just the park lights are on. That's a problem. So clearly that is getting, I'm guessing, power back feeding from some other circuit. And since the park lights are on when that happens, I'm guessing it's the park light circuit. Looking at the wiring diagram, there's a pointing device. This light blue wire here, or rather this is a yellow, the left turn wire comes in here. The park light wire is here, and that's the light blue one. There's two of these, or rather one that comes out of the harness here, and then pigtails over to the other light. So something is happening either in this connector, but they are separate connectors, so maybe not, I don't know. So you can see the park lights are in one connector, and the turn signals are actually in the connector with the headlights and the horn. The first place I'm going to look is right here in this switch. So this is the switch that comes down off of the turn signal connector in the steering column. So this has our horn, our marker lights on it, or our turn signal lights, hazards. Looking at the wiring diagram, it should be pin number 2, and it should be a yellow wire. So there should be 2 yellow wires coming out of there. One of these is going to go up to the cluster to feed the left turn signal indicator, and the other is going to go out that way under the engine bay. But what we'll do is, right now, if I back probe this, there's no power on it. I'm just hooked on the ground here with my test light. There's my light. So if I put a key in the ignition and turn on the left turn signals, let's see what happens. And if I probe that, I should have, you see that blinking? So that's with left turn signals. That makes sense, right? We've got power. We should have no power right now. Turn that off. So what do you think is going to happen when I hit that park light switch? Are we going to have, is that going to light up? Are we going to have power coming back through that connector? We do. Very strong power. Very bright signal compared to the flasher. So something out under the hood is likely shorting the two circuits together. They are two separate circuits. So if you look at the diagram, they don't. So this is This is our left turn wire, and this is the light blue is our park wire. And I've traced those all the way back. If you trace this little light blue guy back here, he comes back to here, which is the park terminal on the dimmer switch. And they're not even in the same harness. I think they're separate connectors. So that my thinking is that perhaps there is a short circuit, or their connections are shorted in one of the one place where they come together. So that could either be in the cluster over here. So maybe there's something in here shorting them, or you know, the next connection point where the two circuits meet is down here at the wire, the connector before it goes into the lamp. So let's go check that. That one's easy to get to. Let's go check that real quick. Okay, so we're up front. So here's our yellow. So this is our turn signal, and these are the two marker wires. So one comes down here, goes into this connector, which goes off to the side marker lights, and then it comes back up here and splits. One of these goes back into the harness and goes over to the driver or passenger side, and this one actually connects and goes down to the lamp. So let's unplug this. So that's kind of dirty in there, but it doesn't look like anything is shorted. Male side of the connector, same. I mean, they're dirty and corroded, but they're not. I guess they're oxidized. They're not really corroded. Well, let's go hit the switch up here and see if it fixes our problem, or at least. Look at that. Park lights are on. Nothing. Let's grab our test light. Tapping the battery to make sure my ground is good. And it is. I'm grounded over here on the radiator bracket. So we should have 12 volts in here. We do not. We do. You can't see that. Here's that yellow, again, is the turn signals. Nothing. The only thing we should have power on is the park signal, park circuit, and we do. See, that's as I jiggle that, and we're in the park circuit. So we're getting power up here. And now that we've unplugged that, it's not going back into the cluster like it was. So that makes me think that maybe the wiring between there and here is fine, and that the short circuit, or the place where they're shorting, is somewhere further down line from here. About as far as you can go is, you know, this connector goes straight down to the lamp. That's this guy. So let's oh, that's broken. Never noticed that before. It's actually cracked. So let's take these out, and let's take a look at the bulb. Maybe there's something in that connector that's bad. It's cracked, so maybe it's got some water in it, and maybe the socket is corroded and it's shorting there. I don't know, that's weird. Let me get that off and we'll take a look. Okay, so here's the bulb out. Or how does that come out of there? She is stuck in there good. Uh-oh. Now that could be a thing. So the bulb is actually seized in the socket. Or the metal base of the bulb is seized in the socket. So there's that. So that took some work to get out. I don't know what was so wrong with it. The connector looks okay, but it is kind of corroded inside of there. Probably just ruined a good bulb. The base of it, those look a little burnt to me. I could be wrong. I bought a multi-pack of these, And that's that little guy. If you look at the bottom of these, or this one, compared to that, I wonder why that one looks so, doesn't that look melted? I don't know. Okay, so I sprayed a little bit of contact cleaner in there. That was kind of, I'm not going to say corroded, but just kind of crunchy, the spring mechanism. So we'll see. One thing I'm going to test real quick. I plugged this back in. Let's just see if it shorts with the bulb out. There's our park lights on. Nothing. Headlights, just for giggles. So you can see, headlights, park lights are on. This one's obviously not because we've got no bulb in it. No turn signal light. That's interesting. So maybe it was just something in the bulb. Let's put this little bulb back in if I can with one hand. This wind is trying to blow away my paper towels. Get back here. Okay. So we're gonna go in. How are we gonna go in there? Looks like that. This should go in. And twist. If I can get it to twist. I cannot. Alright, I need both hands for this. I'm gonna do this and I'll bring it back. So I got this guy back in there. This thing is incredibly hard to get back in. Maybe that's an indicator of something that's wrong inside the socket. I don't know. But let's turn this on again. Yep, so we're back on. So something is wrong in the actual socket itself, I think. So I may have to take that apart next. I do feel pretty good that it's an issue up here somewhere. With this unplugged, you know, I said earlier the headlight harness and the marker turn signal harness, or yeah, turn signals and headlights are in one harness, marker lights are in their own harness, or park lights. I said they're separate. That's true. They combine right there. They come through the firewall separately and they come up here. But I'm thinking, if I unplug this and I don't have an issue anymore, I would think if there was a short somewhere in this run that it would still exist unless I unplugged one of those connectors. Okay, so see, I got my light there, accessory, emissions and accessory mode. I have a flashing bulb. Let's turn the ignition off. And now let's try the headlights, or park lights. Headlights are on. And it doesn't work. Great. Look at that. Those look pretty darn similar. The light's out. Turn that off. Accessory, let's get there's my left turn signal. That is bright. You want to guess what it was? Anybody? Okay, you probably can't see that. There's mounting bolts here. And another one there. Guess what those do? Those hold the lamp assembly into the grill. That is also what grounds the housing to the chassis. And before, this thing was so loose that when I would jiggle this connector, this whole thing would dance up around in the housing. And now you can see it's tight enough that it actually moves the grill. At the end of the day, it was a bad ground. So I guess what was happening was the ground was not good. And when you turned on the park lights, it was finding a ground through the turn signal wire. Since that does have a ground, it grounds at the cluster through the marker turn indicator bulb. So it was finding a ground through that. So now it's grounding where it's supposed to and not through the instrument cluster and light up the bulb. Everything seems to work too. I got turn signals back. Bulb works in both modes. So thanks again for watching. And yeah, I think we call this one done.